Hi, I'm Rebecca. Welcome to my sewing room. This is So Be It. This week I am using a pattern that I've used before, but I am doing a different version using Simplicity S9041. Previously, I did the long version, version A. This time I'm doing version C with the sleeves from dress B. I'm really excited about this project. The fabric I am using is actually a vintage fabric. Pattern Rights Incorporated. It doesn't have the year on it, but I did look it up. I haven't heard of it, but they were around back in the 1800s, and it looks like up through the 1980s, but I did not see anything more recent than that. I found this at a little old department store in the town where I live that's not usually open, but the lady that owns it opened it one day, and I got a bunch of fabric from her. So but it is a border print. It's a lightweight cotton, so it'll be a really good fabric for this dress, and I'm really excited about the border print design for this. This pattern calls for 4 yards. Pattern B in my size calls for 5 3/8 yards. Pattern B is also a bit longer, so I'm not going to need quite as much, but I'm going to need more than 4 yards according to this for the sleeves. So I'm hoping that I will be able to have the sleeve dress, but because it's a border print, it's not that wide, and I do think I have 4 yards, but I'm not positive because of the border print that I'm going to have enough fabric to do it with the sleeves. If I don't have enough fabric, I'll either do smaller sleeves if I have enough for that, or I will just do the sleeveless version, complete version C. So we will see as I go. I do have the pattern pieces all cut out and ready to go. My fabric is ironed, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the pieces out, and when I'll be back, you'll know if this is going to be sleeves or sleeveless. Welcome back. It is day 2. I did get everything cut out yesterday. I did have enough to make the sleeve, but because I added the sleeve, I have to piece together the tie around the waist. On the line drawing, on C, it does look a little bit shorter than on A and B. And because I did A before, the tie is at least the length needed for length A. So hopefully I have enough fabric as it is now to make a long enough tie. It does stitch into the side seams or right at the side seams. I can't remember exactly how I do it. Obviously that's why I have directions. And it should be long enough to at least make a small tie in the front, because if I remember correctly, they were 36 inches long. Let me double check how long I have it. They're 34 inches long, so that should give me enough. I won't have enough to make a bow if I wanted to, but a little knot in the front, I should have enough for that. I did have a little bit of the border print, so I decided to make that into the end, like the pointed part of the ties. So that'll be front and center. So that should make a little nice extra touch to it. The tie will be a little bit shorter than 34 inches because I had to piece it together. So right now I have 3 sections of fabric to make the tie, And so I'll have 2 seam allowances in there, so it'll be a little bit shorter, but I think I'll do like a 3/8 seam allowance instead of a 5/8 seam allowance, so it gives me just that extra length. So the first steps, as usual on a dress, are to go ahead and put the bodice together. This pattern calls for stay stitching the neckline so that that does not stretch or get misshapen over time. So I'll start with that. We then have to apply the facing to the front of the bodice pieces, both of those. Those have to be interfaced and let me see, and under stitched. So I'll do all of that. And then there's a small pleat in the front, lower waist. I'll do both of those. Following that is the back of the bodice, which also has to be stay stitched, and then stitched front to back at the shoulders and the side seams. Once I'm finished with that, I will be back to show you how to put on this neckband, because it might be a little bit confusing. And my neckband is going to look a little bit different because it's supposed to be cut on the fold, but I did not have enough fabric to cut it on the fold the way it needed to be. So they will each have seam, or each neckband piece will have a seam in it instead of being cut on the fold. So I will show you how to do that. I have the bodice completed all the way up to the neckband. I had to prepare my neckbands more than I would one without the interfacing. I just went ahead and sewed that little bit together and pressed open the seam allowance. The one with the interfacing, I put the interfacing on first and then sewed them together with the seam allowance. There are 2 dots on the neckband. These dots here are supposed to meet at the shoulder seams, right there. So this has to get pinned. This one with the interfacing gets pinned to the right side of the bodice, right sides together, and then that has to get stitched. Once I stitch it, I'll go ahead and press the band and the seam to the top, and then I'll come back for the next step. I have the neckband all stitched on, and now it's time to work on the neckband facing. Here's the facing. The facing is the one without the interfacing on it. This is the side that I sewed to the dress of the neckband. Well, this is the same side that now I have to press under a generous 1/4 inch before I sew this side to the actual neckband. So I will go ahead and press the 1/4 inch, and then I will actually show you when I am pinning the neckband facing onto the neckband what I actually mean. All right, so I have the neckband facing. The edge there is all folded and pressed. It is like that because I will be pinning the unpressed edge to the neckband itself, pinning that all the way around here and stitching a 3/8 inch seam in that spot. And then I have to, that's right. I'll have to trim the seam and turn the facing to the inside of the dress. Once that's all done, I will be back because I'm going to show you how to stitch in the ditch. It's a pretty easy concept, but it can be kind of confusing. So I'll go ahead and show you that. So the next step is to sew my neckband facing to basically to the inside, so the facing is all nice and ready to go. You can see that I have pins in there, but my pins are on the outside of the bodice. That's because I have to stitch in the ditch. What does it mean to stitch in the ditch? If you look here, the pins are right along that seam for my neckband. That seam is the ditch. So to attach the facing, or to sew down the facing of this dress, I have to stitch in that seam, hence stitch in the ditch. To do this really well and really nicely so that you can see, you do have to stitch on the outside of the fabric, so you're basically blind stitching. I've had a lot of issues with this when I've done it before, because I made sure that my fold, which it is folded on the wrong side under, so that I can just stitch on this. But I made sure that my fold was right on that seam, and you don't want to do that because it doesn't always catch. So I don't do a perfect measurement, but my fold is usually right about 1/8 of an inch past that seam. So let's go ahead and stitch in the ditch. So here is the neckband. You can really only in some spots, like on this side, you can't see that stitching pretty much at all. So that's what it looks like on the inside. That's how to do a neckband and how to stitch in the ditch. So the next thing I need to do is cross my dress over and baste on the bottom, and then go ahead and move on to putting the skirt together. It's got 4 seams, front center seam, back center seam, and both of the side seams. So I need to put the skirt together and attach my pockets. And then, actually, first is the sleeve. Forgot about that. It's a short sleeve, but it is that nice blousey, flowy sleeve. So I have to do a rolled hem at the bottom and then ease in the sleeve to the bodice. And then I move on to the skirt and the tie. I have to do a casing. So I have to make a casing at the waistband with the skirt and the bodice pieces themselves. So I am also going to show you how to do that. So the next time you see me, I will be showing you how to do the casing. I now have the dress together to the point of pinning or of sewing the bodice to the skirt. So I just want to let you know step by step how to do this because we're forming a casing. We, as usual, have to line up all of our markings. I made a chalk line for the center front on the bodice. So I'm lining that chalk line up with the center front seam on the skirt. And I'm going to go ahead and pin that. Then I will be matching up my side seams, which are pretty easy to find here. And then I don't have anything to match up the center back with, but I do have some waist notches in the back. So I'm going to match up those, and then I will basically evenly pin the rest of the skirt and the bodice together. It looks like I may have a tad bit of easing in the skirt, but not much. So that won't be a problem. Once I'm finished pinning, I'm going to go ahead and do my regular 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and stitch the bodice to the skirt. Once that seam is finished, I'll go ahead and let you know step by step how to form the casing and insert your elastic and get it all stitched up and closed. Okay, so I do have that regular 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on my skirt and bodice pieces. To make the casing, I like to choose an easy I want to say indespicable, but that's definitely not the right answer. I'm putting two words, or the right word. I'm putting two words together there. Indiscriminate, that's not right. Anyways, you want to find a good hidden spot, and an easy spot, because you have to have an opening to thread your elastic through. So I'm going to go ahead and have the center back part open to thread the elastic through, and then sew the elastic. You'll sew that closed once the elastic is stitched together and secure. So to make the casing, I'm going to leave the center back seam allowances open, but I'm going to stitch a line here. It says at 3/8 of an inch. I will probably end up making it closer to 1/4 of an inch, but anywhere between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch is good. I am back. I feel like this thing has taken me forever, but it really hasn't taken me that long. It's just been over a mini span of days. So yesterday I got the casing finished. You can see the stitching on here. Here's my regular 5/8 stitching line, but then right up here, which is kind of a little bit harder to see, is between 1/8 or 1/4 and 3/8 of an inches stitching line. And then here at the seam, I left a spot open so that I can thread the elastic through. I didn't stretch this at all when I cut it, and while I was thinking about it and not working on this, I realized I always have to stretch it a little bit. You know what? For now, I'm just gonna leave it at my waist length and then stretch it when I try it on. I'll be putting my dress on and sizing the elastic and then stitching the elastic and stitching the casing closed. So that is the final step for the casing in the seam allowance of of anything, but in this case of a waistband. And then the final steps are making the ties and stitching those on, and then hemming the dress. I have not completely decided if I am going to have the ties on or not. I'm going to make them the way that they're supposed to, and then I think I'm going to pin them onto the dress and see how it works out before I decide for sure or not. If I decide to not have the ties, I will let you know. If I decide I do have the ties, I will just go ahead and attach the ties to the dress and hem the dress, and then I'll be back for the final product. So one thing I do want to mention, when you do casings like this, you have to make sure that you have that thin elastic that it calls for. This calls for a 1/4 inch wide elastic. It's nice and thin. If I didn't have this elastic, this would not work. The thicker parts that I have to go through, like where this is the bodice facing, where that is, or where the pleats are, or even the side seams, this fabric is not that thick itself, but where there's multiple layers, it is tough to get this elastic through. You have to go pretty slowly feeding it through and making sure you pull it, or else it's just getting bunched up and getting stuck. So make sure that you get the 1/4 inch wide fabric and nothing wider. I wouldn't go thinner either, unless you have a really good like 1/8 inch fabric or elastic, but I do like the 1/4 inch, so just a tip. As you may have noticed, I really, really like this pattern. The original pattern, or the very first pattern I did, was the long sleeve and longer length version of this dress, and I really, really liked it for an early spring dress. It's long enough when it has enough coverage that it is warm enough. This version I do really like for this time of year. This fabric is a little bit heavier than I thought it would be, but it's also really, really humid right now. So I am a bit sweaty, a bit warm from wearing the dress today, but it is really comfortable. This is a really good dress for this time of year, but I also think with the length of it, because it's just below my knees, or at my knees, and with the big longer sleeves, it's a good dress for summer and obviously to protect you from the sun. But I think it'll be also a really good dress for this fall, before it gets too cold, maybe even the later fall. And I could throw a tank top and a sweater over it for some extra layering and warmth, and some tights. We'll see how I style this in the future. So if you like dresses that you can just grab and throw on, they're nice and flowy, different lengths. This top just opens. I do have it pinned right here, because for whatever reason this one did not stay as closed as the other one, and I wonder if it's the difference in the fabric, because I used cotton sateen for the other one, or if it's just because I've had that one for a while and I'm obviously used to that one, but I've washed it a few times. So I do also wonder if it's just from the wear of the other dress that it stays closed longer or better, because I don't remember whether or not that happened when I first made the other dress. So that is something to maybe keep in mind. I did make sure that I have the waistline pinned and all sewn together in the correct spot, so I don't have it any more open than I do on the other ones. I'm not really sure, but just know you can put a safety pin there, do a stitch there, like a real easy stitch that doesn't come all the way through the outside of the fabric, just in case. But overall, I love this pattern. It's not a really dressy kind of dress pattern, but it's perfect for any day of the week. Really good for a church service on Sunday, a family dinner, anything. This is a great pattern. Because of all of the variations in the pattern, the sleeveless, the short sleeves, the long sleeves, you could do a tie, you could do multiple different lengths, all of that, all the different variations. You can actually make quite a few different dresses with this pattern. So that's all I have for you this week. If you liked my video, go ahead and hit that like button for me. It boosts my channel on YouTube. If you don't want to miss any of my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and it will subscribe you to my channel, and you will not miss anything that I post. And if you really want to know every single time I post, when I post, go ahead and hit that notification bell, and YouTube will tell you when I post. Thank you for watching Rebecca's Sewing Room. This was Sew Be It.